since we're all in person. So we'll get started. Good evening and welcome to City Hall. Tonight we hold a regular twice monthly meeting of the Westminster Mayor and Common Council. Please note that our meetings are available and streamed live on the city's YouTube page, as well as the Community Media Center channel and website. I'd like to thank the Media Center for providing that service. As a courtesy to everyone, take a moment to silence your phones or anything else that might make some noise. That would be fantastic. And now, as we begin every meeting, we will start with a pledge and a moment of silence following the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Copies of tonight's agenda and the entire information packet that the council will be using are available online on the city's website. And there are some copies here on the chair in the front of the room if anybody would like to have a copy. I have a statement to make for the record. We held a closed meeting on Monday, September 28th, in accordance with the general provisions of Article Section 306C, subsection 2 of the Annotated Code of Maryland. And without objection, it is noted that the minutes of tonight's meeting reflect that the Common Council met in a closed meeting on Monday, September 28th at 4:05 p.m. pursuant to the General Code 3-305B, subsection 1, to discuss the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, discipline, demotion, compensation, removal, resignation, or performance evaluation of appointees, employees, or officials over whom this public body has jurisdiction, and any other personnel matters that affect one or more specific individuals, and subsection B7, to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice. Following staff members were in attendance: City Administrator Impulse and City Attorney Levin. The Common Council took official action during this meeting. Closed meeting adjourned at 6:30 p.m. And we have no presentations this evening. We do have 4 sets of minutes that we need to approve. We have minutes from the Mayor and Council meeting on August 28th, 2023, the Mayor and Common Council meeting of September 11th, 2023, a special Mayor and Common Council meeting of September 18th, 2023, and the Mayor and Common Council closed session meeting minutes of September 18th, 2023. Have a motion to approve those minutes, please.
Motion to approve.
Councilman Day Huff with the motion and Councilwoman Gilbert with the second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Motion's passed. We have 2 items on the consent calendar this evening. I'd like to have a motion to approve the consent calendar, please.
Mr. President, I'll make a motion to approve the consent.
Thank you, Councilman Huff. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Gilbert. All in favor of approving the consent calendar, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed. The motion is passed. We have 2 public hearings this evening, and public hearings in the city of Westminster are run by our mayor. So Mayor Becker, the gavel is all yours.
Thank you, sir. Start with the public hearing ordinance number 2023-06 Cannabis Overlay District. And I'll note the start time as 7:04. Ordinance number 2023-06 Cannabis Overlay District, an ordinance of the Mayor and Common Council of Westminster. Adopting a sectional map amendment to repeal the former medical cannabis overlay district and designate the boundaries of the new cannabis overlay district for the purpose of establishing the appropriate locations for the designation of cannabis overlay floating zones permitted in the operation of cannabis businesses within the city. Anyone like to comment? Mr. Depot, do you have anything to add to that?
I just want to update just where we are from the last introduction by Mayor and Common Council. That's okay. So on August 14th, 2023, the Mayor and Common Council did introduce ordinance 2023-06. and referred the ordinance to the Planning and Zoning Commission for its review and recommendation to the Mayor and Common Council. On September 21st, 2023, the Planning and Zoning Commission held a public hearing on ordinance 2023-06 and forwarded a recommendation to approve the ordinance to the Mayor and Common Council as introduced by the Mayor and Common Council on August 14th. The Mayor and Common Council notice of public hearing to be held on today, September 25th, 2023, for ordinance 2023-06 was advertised on September 3rd and September 10th in the Carroll County Times. The Department of Community Planning and Development recommends that ordinance 2023-06 Cannabis Overlay District Map Amendment provided in attachment 1 of this report and as introduced by the Mayor and Common Council on August 14th, 2023, be approved by the Mayor and Common Council. And that completes my report. I'm available for any questions.
Any questions or comments? If not, I will close this public hearing. We will move on to public hearing number 2. Public hearing ordinance number 2023-07-07, Art Galleries Studios Text Amendment. Ordinance number 2023-07, Art Galleries Studios Text Amendment, an ordinance of the Mayor and Common Council of Westminster, amending Chapter 164, Zoning and Subdivision of Land of the Code of the City of Westminster to amend Article 8A C-C Central Commerce Zone, Section 164-45.2, Article 7B DB Downtown Business Zone, Section 164-45.8, and Article 9 CB Central Business Zone, Section 164-47 to add art galleries and studios. Mr. Depot, would you like to add anything to this, please?
Yes, thank you. So again, on August 28th, 2023, the Mayor and Common Council introduced ordinance 2023-07, a text amendment to add art galleries and studios as a permitted use in the CC, DB, and CB zoning districts, and referred the ordinance to the Planning and Zoning Commission for its review and recommendation to the Mayor and Common Council. On September 21st, 2023, the Planning and Zoning Commission held a public hearing on ordinance 2023-07 and forwarded a recommendation to approve the ordinance to the Mayor and Common Council as introduced by the Mayor and Common Council on August 28th, 2023. The Mayor and Common Council notice of public hearing to be held today, September 25th, 2023, for ordinance 2023-07 was advertised on September 3rd and 10th of 2023 in the Carroll County Times. With that, the Department of Community Planning and Development recommends that ordinance 2023-07 Art Gallery Studios Text Amendment provided in attachment 1 of this report and as introduced by the Mayor and Common Council on August 28th, 2023, be approved by the Mayor and Common Council. And that completes my report. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Are there any public comments on this ordinance? Hearing none, we will close that. Hand that back over to you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Moving on, let's move on to the mayor's report. Madam Mayor,
All right, thank you.
board, sitting yours.
Off the gavel. Thank you. So it's been a quiet 2 weeks since we last met. One of the things I'll just touch on very quickly is that the Main Street project has started at the intersection of Longwell and Main and will proceed west on Main Street towards Pennsylvania. The Fall Fest Parade was pretty amazing on Thursday. I'd like to say thank you to the Rec and Parks Department and the Streets Department for taking good care of me during the parade since I could not walk in the parade. I think the decorations on the gator were over the top, especially when we were cruising through the neighborhoods after dark with the balloons on the gator. And one of my students told me that I had the best float in the parade. It was a great crowd and there was so much positive energy. On Friday, Fall Fest was packed for the Reagan years. In fact, Snyder's Amusements kept the midway open longer than usual so folks could get in and ride. The fire pits, as always, are a big hit. And I was thankful to have one a little bit back from the music. And we had a phenomenal evening. Unfortunately, rain caused the activities for the rest of the weekend to be moved inside or canceled. And while I was sad to see Fall Fest shortened, I was also very happy to get a couple inches of rain over the weekend. I know there's a lot of other rec and parks activities coming in October. I'm going to defer to Council Member Ann Gilbert, our chair of the Rec and Parks Committee, to report on those items a little bit later. Just two other things of note that I have found interesting. This week is McDaniel's homecoming. So McDaniel has their homecoming events on Friday and Saturday. On Saturday, the women's and men's soccer both take on F&M, and the football team takes on Gettysburg at 1 p.m. So if you're in town, you can head on up to the Hill and enjoy some football and some festivities at McDaniel College. I also wanted to call attention to a story NPR did within the last 2 days on Major General Janine Burkhead. She is currently the only Black woman leading the state military, and NPR did a great background article on her history and the items that helped shape her into the Major General that she is today. And I know we've all met her and spent some time with her and really enjoyed the Major General's company. And then last but not least, we will hold trick-or-treating on Tuesday, October 31st. And our time we usually do that is from 6 to 8 p.m. And so trick-or-treat will be on October 31st. That's all I have.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Now we'll move on to reports from standing committees. We'll start off with the Arts Council, Councilman Dale.
We're continuing our work on the strategic plan with the Arts Council. If anybody's available for the movie on October the 13th, we will be playing the original 1982 version of Blade Runner. They will be playing the director's cut. It's one of my favorite all-time movies. That'll be my report.
Thank you very much. Economic and Community Development, Councilman Huff.
No update tonight.
Thank you very much. Finance Committee, Council President Pecoraro.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Finance Committee met last week. We are bringing to you later on the agenda for introduction our first budget amendment for the fiscal year. As all my colleagues will recall, we have adopted this practice on the recommendation of our city administrator. Rather than doing kind of a roll up at the end of the year, along the way, we are doing budget amendments to make sure that the budget always remains current with whatever additional spending we need to do or whatever additional revenues we're aware are coming in. So we'll be bringing the first of these to you for the fiscal year later this evening. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to Personnel Committee. Again.
Nothing to report, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Public Safety would be me. Get that up in front of me. I do have a report. So I have a couple of items I want to report on quickly. On September 11th through the 14th, Lieutenant Steve Arnold and Lieutenant Michael Donovan completed the Aspiring Leaders Professional Development Training Conference, which was sponsored by the Maryland Chiefs of Police Association. So that's wonderful. Great to get them that extra training. Good job, Chief. On September 12th, 23, Sergeant Huff and PFC Chinaki attended the Block Armorers School. I'm a little jealous, which will add them to the list of staff able to help the department properly maintain our firearms platform. 4 Westminster Police Department recruits continue their training at the Carroll County Sheriff's Office Police Academy, which began on the September 18th. The Police Academy training will span just over 6 months, and we certainly are looking forward to their successful completion to get them out here and working on the road. On September 11th through the 22nd, Sergeant Laser, Sergeant Ecker, and PFC Hall successfully completed the Level 1 Crash Reconstruction School hosted by the Harford County Sheriff's Office. And I can tell you, because I went through that about 35 years ago, that is a challenging course. So congratulations to all 3 of them for getting through that. That is my report. We'll keep moving on. So we'll move on to Public Works, Councilwoman Gilbert.
Phase 1 of the Main Street water main replacement job has begun. Phase 1 work has been focused at the intersection of Longwell Avenue and East Main Street, adding and replacing the valves. Phase 2 will start in the upcoming weeks. All sidewalks and streets will remain open during construction. Please note that there will be notifications sent out when the water is shut down sent out when water shutdown times are determined. Read that correctly. Please visit the city website if you have or need any more information. The streets department over the past 2 weeks was focused on the preparation, the execution, and the cleanup of our 44th annual Fall Fest hosted at City Park, and they continue to dry out tonight. That's all I have.
Great. You can continue with the Recreation and Parks report, please.
Sure, and that's going to be a little longer. So our Parks and Rec staff has been, along with our Public Works Department, drying out and cleaning up from a very wet, rainy Fall Fest. At the same time, they're quickly moving forward with preparation for the oyster stroll that will be October 14th, that I will talk about in a few minutes, and this will be Saturday, and clock tower dedication on the 21st. But before I get to those, Westminster Fire Department's 200 year of service celebration parade and antique fire muster celebration will be October 7th, beginning at 10 a.m. with the parade. Just want to make a note, this is not a city sponsored event, but a city supported event. Oyster Stroll is coming up, so please shop, slurp, and stroll through downtown Westminster. Annual festival, annual stroll, I shall say, features local oyster farmers, live music, delicious food, and a lot more fun for an entire family. The event is designed to raise awareness about the Chesapeake Bay farm-raised oysters and highlights how Westminster is working to restore wild oysters back into the bay by working with environmental partners to create new oyster reefs from recycled oyster shells. The next event will be the Halloween event that will be asking all our little ghouls, goblins, and pirates and princesses to join us in downtown Westminster for lots of activities, including games, crafts, live entertainment on the Locust Lane stage from 3:30 to 4:15, and again from 5:15 to 6 p.m. And then we will have the rededication of the clock tower. And it looks like that will be October 21st around 5 p.m. during the spooky Saturday event, complete with root beer floats, 50s dance contests, and a special car show. We will have events such as bubblegum balloon contest, the ribbon cutting, and a twist dance contest. And the Back to the Future movie will be at 6:30 at the Westminster Fitness Center. That's all.
Thank you very much. Move on to Technology Committee, Councilman Dayhoff.
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Intergovernmental Affairs, Councilman Huff.
No report.
Great. We'll move on to council comments. We'll start off with Councilman Dayhoff.
No report, Mr. President.
Councilwoman Gilbert.
I have nothing else to say. I think I.
Fantastic.
My report.
Councilman Huff.
I'll be quick as well. It's enjoyed Fall Fest, even though it got rained on. We really needed the rain. So that's it. Thank you.
Great. And I'm sorry, Council President Pecoraro, do you have anything?
No, thank you, Mr. President. Just to say that I'm sorry not to be with you all, and I'm even sorry that I got this this busted knee here. So, hope to see you all soon.
Wonderful. And I have no comments, so we'll move on to ordinance and resolutions, of which we have 3 this evening. The first one is the adoption of ordinance number 2023-06, Cannabis Overlay District, an ordinance of the Mayor and Common Council of Westminster adopting a sectional map amendment to repeal the former medical cannabis overlay district and designate the boundaries of the new cannabis overlay for the purpose of establishing the appropriate locations for the designation of cannabis overlay floating zones, permitting the operation of cannabis businesses in the city. Community Planning and Development Director Depot, do you have anything to add?
I have nothing else to add. Thank you.
Great. Then we'll go ahead and open it up. I'm sorry, let's get a motion on the table. Can I have a motion to approve, please?
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion made by Councilwoman Gilbert, seconded by Councilman Huff. We'll go ahead and open up the floor to any discussion. Any members of the council or the mayor?
Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. We've had this before us for a little while and have had the chance to think about it, and also, the chance to see how it's operating and hear from the community a little bit. And one of the concerns that I've heard raised is from folks who are operating other businesses in the commercial area, on the east side of the city, where one of the zones is and where one of these operations is, and they've been raising a number of concerns with me, and I'm wondering if we might want to, if it's possible, even to rethink whether or not the cannabis overlay zone, instead of just the medical zone, should exist in that area. Whether there's anything we can still do about that, or how we ought to look about that. And wondering if Mr. Depot, did the Planning Commission talk about that at all when they considered this, or did the staff have any comments on that?
No, the Planning Commission did not have any comments regarding the two locations for the cannabis district. It's two primary locations. You have the northern one, which is primarily IR and PI zoned properties, and the southern or eastern element that's a B business zone. So it's broken up in two primary locations that we provided. But again, the Planning Commission didn't have any comments. They again recommended to approve the cannabis overlay district as introduced.
Mr. President, if I could just ask, is it, of Mr. Depot and of the city attorney, is it possible at this point to just go with the northern area and remove the commercial business area that's on the east side of the city as a permitted area for cannabis sales?
I am not aware of any provision in the city code, and I just kind of looked through it very quickly, anticipating this question. I didn't see anything that would prohibit you from removing that from the proposal if you were inclined to do so.
I'll get you 1 minute, Madam Mayor. So, Council President Pecoraro, I'm going to go ahead and have a few of the other members maybe weigh in on this, and then we can circle back and talk a little bit about maybe the direction we went ahead in terms of, are we going to pull this question or make modifications? So, good. If it's okay, I'd like to have a little more discussion amongst
Absolutely.
Move on. So, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And this is probably a question for our attorney and Mr. Depot as well. If we were to pull the ordinance or change it so we don't include the eastern section there, would that close them?
No, they'd be considered a legal non-conforming use because they were established legally. So they can continue to operate in perpetuity. They just can't expand. Or if they were to cease to operate for 6 months exactly, they could not renew or come back again.
Can you repeat that last part?
So again, as a non-conforming use, if you cease to operate in that location for 6 months, you can't do a use at that property unless it meets the requirements of the ordinance. So another cannabis user could not come into that space and operate that use.
So it wouldn't halt the existing business?
It would keep them open, but
Yes.
no one else could take the business. They couldn't even take the business over.
They couldn't even take the
They
business
could
over.
purchase the business and keep it running, but they can't start another business.
They couldn't even take it. If they had to get a new license and change license from one user to another, that would be a change that would not be allowed. It's only the operator that's there today, and the license that it's operating today may continue to operate.
Thank you.
Mr. President.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I guess I have two questions. So if someone purchased that business, they would then have to probably move to another location where it would be acceptable for them to operate. Is that correct?
Yes, if they were to move, they would have to locate into the northern portion, the PI or the IRI district, where we've defined the overlay district.
And the second question I have is, what are the concerns I'm now just hearing that there's concerns, so I'm kind of curious as to what those concerns are,
I think you want to direct that to Council President Pecoraro.
if I can. If that's possible.
Yeah, let's give Councilman Huff a chance also, and then we'll go back to Council President Pecoraro.
So, non-conforming use, though, does that die when if you sell the business? I thought the business is still operating. If you sell the business, the non-conforming use still stays.
No, it's in this case, it's a little unusual because it's a specific license for this operation, this user, and this user was given specific approval by the mayor and common council to operate at this location. So if they were to leave, anybody coming back in would have to be back before the mayor and common council to establish their cannabis business at that location.
So in another scenario, not this particular kind of use, the non-conforming use would transfer, if I had a non-conforming use, typically if the ownership changes, the use still exists.
Yes, it could, or if it was a little minor of a change of non-conforming, the Board of Zoning Appeals can always approve replace one with another, or just to reestablish that non-conforming use.
But this is different because of the specific type of use that we're talking about, which is the cannabis.
And the fact that they came specifically before the mayor and common council and obtained an approval by the mayor and common council and ordinance for that particular user and entity.
Yeah, the Myers-Thurber Funeral Home, for example, was a non-conforming use that had sold a couple of times, but they've been able to stay.
That's typically, yeah.
Come for us.
Yes.
Council President Pecoraro, Councilwoman Gilbert, I think asking specifically what some of the complaints are. Do you care to elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Mr. President. It's a good question. I heard from some of the business owners, that are in the current shopping center where the establishment is located right now, that having them there is pretty disruptive, that they've got other concerns about the effect it's having on their businesses there, and the way the shopping center is operating. So they asked if the mayor and council could do anything about it. I was clear with them that we could not shut the business down, but that we could look at whether or not we could prevent growth or other locations in that area. So as I thought about it, I thought when we originally did this, one of the reasons, as I recall, that we wanted to allow the medical cannabis in that area was because it was located closer to. We thought that the business industrial area was, and I always got the zoning names wrong. Mr. Depot will have to forgive me, but when we talked about putting it over there, it made sense. It was an open area, away from residences and lots of other businesses. When we allowed it in this other commercial area, one of the thoughts was that it was relatively near the county's sort of medical campus. Many of the counties, central Carroll County's doctors are located near that area. The hospital's not far away, and it made some sense for medical cannabis prescriptions to be able to be dispensed out of that area. I'm not sure we thought it through enough in terms of the effect that it would have, on that area as it switched to a different kind of sales. And so I think that's, as I heard from some of these business owners, it made me think that it was worth revisiting and making sure that we had a conversation about it before we made a final decision.
Thank you. I have a quick question. What is our time constraint, or what would put pressure on us to make this decision today versus potentially pulling this question, maybe throwing it back to committee and staff and discussing this a little more? What's the time frame look like in case that's the direction we wanted to head in?
Well, they're like dispensary. That's the one at 700 Corporate Center Court. They want to expand. And they cannot expand into an adjoining suite until this is approved. When they got their approval from the mayor and common council, it's a little unusual, but it was specific to a suite and that defined area inside of a building, not the property. So they have been wanting to expand for quite some time now, and they've been waiting for this to move forward.
That's the Commerce Center.
That's the Commerce Center one, yes, the IR district, or they're in the PI district and industrial.
Which is not the one we're really talking about, unfortunately.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not speaking as the council president pro tem. I'm just speaking as just one of the council members at this point. I think Councilman Peckerer does bring up some concerns that really do relate to that specific location. And I will say my recollection, because I was on council at the time when this came up as medical, is he's right. We definitely talked about that being a location that we'd be good with because of its proximity to a lot of the other doctor's offices and hospital relative to it versus the IR zone. And I think we didn't contemplate the fact that we didn't know what the state was going to do. They were making stuff up as it goes when they were passing a lot of these laws, and we had no idea what the direction was going to be, and certainly didn't know that they were just going to automatically grant recreational license to the medical licenses, which is what it seems like they've done. I don't think we contemplated that 4 or 5 years ago when we did it, and I'm not sure we even contemplated it in planning and zoning committee quite so much, but. So I'm kind of inclined to suggest maybe we pull it at least for one meeting and kind of figure out maybe the direction we want to head in. Maybe put it back to committee, talk about it a little bit more and see if there's some way we can potentially accomplish what we're trying to do without necessarily completely shutting it down over there. But maybe that's not possible. I don't know.
Mr. President, I guess a couple of thoughts, and I haven't really thought about this either. So, but you know, we would be making this other business a non-conforming use, okay, by pulling that area out. And also, you know, we're not just talking about pulling that one section out, we're talking about pulling everything off on that one side, okay? And you know, one could argue, and I don't know the details of some of the disruptions, but you know, whether they're parking related or what those disruptions are, but those can be somewhat site specific to that particular property, which could be somewhat of a, you know, a management or property owner standpoint, as opposed to the underlying zoning of the area. So I do feel like I don't want to like unilateral. I would like us to have more time to think about this, but I also don't want to hold up, you know, this other job. So I don't know, and this is a question we're asking the attorney. Is it possible that if we move forward on the map amendment that we have in front of us for the northern part, what I call the northern part, take off the southern part, can we revisit and add, if we decide to add part of the southern part back in? Can we do another map amendment, or do we have to go through a whole nother ordinance? Is it best just from a reconsideration standpoint to pull it and then come back to this? Because we've already introduced the ordinance. So I'm kind of asking a technical question about what is the best way to do this? Should we kind of pull this off the agenda for tonight and kind of relook at it and bring it back? Or I'm looking for a little bit of input from our attorney and staff or city administrator. Hello.
So from my perspective, you've already introduced something and you're ready to act on it. So if you remove a portion of it, then you'll have to come back with a whole new ordinance to add it back in. But
it's just a map though, because it's not the ordinance itself. We're amending.
Correct, it's the map. It's the map that implements the ordinance that you had done previously. Now, a little bit ago, I was asked about whether you could do that, and under your code, it appears that you can remove a portion of what was proposed and go forward with the rest. One of the things that I did since I've heard your discussion is pull up the state law about the cannabis, and there is some discussion about not being able to establish unreasonable zoning requirements for cannabis businesses in this transition. If you decide not to move forward with this tonight, I would like to be able to take a look at exactly if state law addresses this issue and has any bearing on it.
Which I think makes sense.
Mr. President?
Yes.
So, you know, it would be my recommendation that, we postpone further consideration of this until the next meeting. I would think that would give us a couple of weeks to look into the questions that Ms. Ruff was raising, as well as give other council members a chance to learn more about the situation, and perhaps let others speak up on this. I'm sympathetic to the concerns of the folks up on in the northern location, but I don't think 2 weeks is going to. They've waited a little while. 2 weeks is going to damage their plans. I would hope not anyway, and it would give us the chance to make a more thoughtful decision.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think that probably would be, because I think trying to amend it here and now would be reckless, in my opinion, at least. So we do have we have the question on the floor. So procedurally speaking, we've got to get that question removed. So I guess we need a
Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
The way to do that. I move that we postpone consideration of this item until the next meeting.
Okay, so we have a motion to postpone this until the next meeting. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so Councilman Hub seconds. So we'll go ahead and call that question to postpone. So may I have a vote on Council President Pecoraro's motion to postpone this question until our next meeting? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. So it looks like we have a split vote. I'm going to go ahead and vote on this, even though I typically wouldn't. Since I'm presiding, I'm going to vote aye as well. So all those that are nay, please signify by saying nay.
Nay.
Okay. I don't believe you have voted, Councilman Dayoff. Are you abstaining or voting?
I was concerned that we already had a motion on the floor.
Do I need a vote, a yes or no, or an abstain?
I think we ought to postpone it because I think there's a conflict with state law.
So the ayes have it. We will go ahead and postpone until the next meeting. Thank you very much. We'll move on.
Mr. President.
Yeah.
Does this need to go back procedurally, go back to economic and community development? Because that was the committee that was looking at this.
So the motion did not necessarily tell us what to do next, but I think that's a fair question. Why don't we move that to new business? Because we're under ordinance at this point. So we'll move that to new business, and we'll open a discussion up on the new business related to this in terms of where, as a group, we think it should be referred back to. Does that make sense, everyone? Okay, yeah. So then we'll continue on with our ordinance and resolution section. So I believe that moves us to item B, which is the adoption of an ordinance 2023-07, art galleries and studios, text amendment and ordinance of the mayor and common council, amending chapter 164, zoning and subdivision of land of the code of the city of Westminster to amend article 8A C-C Central Commerce Zone, section 164-45.2, article 8B, and DB Downtown Business Zone, section 164-4.45.8, and article 9 CB Central Business Zone, section 164-47, to add art galleries and studios. Mr. Depot.
I have nothing else to add. Thank you.
Okay. Let's go ahead and get the question on the floor. May I have a motion to adopt ordinance 23-07?
Motion to approve.
Councilman Dayhoff moves.
I'll second.
Councilman Huff seconds. Questions on the floor? Does anyone have any comments or discussion related to the adoption of this ordinance? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor of adopting ordinance 23-07 signify by saying aye.
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 The ayes have it, and the ordinance is passed. We'll move on to section C, which is introduction of ordinance 23-09, an ordinance of the mayor and common council of Westminster, Maryland, amending the adopted budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2023 and ending June 30th, 2024, fiscal year 2024, Budget Amendment Number 1, Finance Director Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. President. The city's fiscal year commenced on July 1st of 2023. In accordance with section 20-2 of the Code of the City of Westminster, the city administrator prepared a budget for the mayor to present to the Common Council for consideration. Ordinance 2023-03 approving a budget for fiscal 24 was adopted on May 8th, 2023. During the remainder of this current year, the city will incur additional expenses that exceed the current appropriations, and therefore additional appropriations are necessary. A summary of the proposed additions is included, and the funding sources are as follows. $30,000 from capital projects benefit assessment funds, $70,564 new intergovernmental funds for a state grant, $45,500 from sewer fund reserves, and $122,500 from water fund reserves, for total additional appropriations of $268,564. The staff is recommending that the mayor and common council introduce the amended budget appropriations as detailed in ordinance number 2023-09.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. Let's go ahead and get the question on the floor, and then we can have questions and discussion. I have a motion to introduce ordinance 23-09.
So moved, Mr. President.
Okay, I've got, fortunately, Council President Pecoraro, you were second. So second on that, Councilwoman Gilbert beat you to it, so she is the motion. Let's go ahead and open it up for any discussion, questions, concerns, or anything with this.
I have a question or two. So, water treatment chemicals, that was just an oversight, it appears to be, is that correct? Just the.
That's correct.
Okay. And then the sewer shed study, it says 50,000 in budget resulting in a shortfall of 55. So the total amount of what we think that's going to cost is 105. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so we had 50 in, but we're going to be closer to 105. Hence, we're increasing the budget to cover that.
Yes, the budget from last fiscal year included funds to cover this. We thought we would be finished by then, and we're not. And somehow it didn't make it back in the final version from last year's when we were preparing the original budget.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. And then the ADA improvements, those are improvements that we're making to 45 West Main?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. What are those improvements, by the way?
When the building was renovated, the front door was not included with ADA. You can't open the door like you can everywhere else where you hit the ADA button. A staff member can't access, the building itself is a key card. So staff member can't access the building other than when the building is open, but there are a variety of staff that work other than those hours, including a new staff member that we have that needs to access the building, but it's not accessible to that employee. So we need to make the building accessible from the front door. The back door has a key card that you can use. That's where most staff enter the building. That's where most of you enter the building. But as you know, you have to go up and down some steps in order to get into the building from the back door. So if you're a staff member who needs to access the building outside of the normal hours from 8:30 to 4:30, you can't if you need an ADA opportunity. So
the front door will now have a key card access.
Key card.
And also the push button that will automatically open the door.
That's correct.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that.
Mm-hmm.
As it should have from the beginning. I'm not sure how we missed that. Any other comments? I'll just one quick thing, being on the finance committee, back to the chemicals. Just want to be clear on that. That is not money we would not spend otherwise. We spend that every year on chemicals. It just did not, it was a technical error not getting into the budget is all that was. Sure. Not extra or anything like that. Okay. There's no other comments. Let's go ahead and vote on the question. Again, this is introduction of ordinance 23-09. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 The ayes have it. The motion is the ordinance is introduced. I'm sorry. Okay, we'll move on to unfinished business. I'm not aware of any unfinished business. Does anyone have any unfinished business they're aware of? Hearing none, we'll move on to new business. I don't know if we have to amend the agenda in order to do this or not, but we're going to go ahead and have one item of new business, and that's to continue our discussion related to the adoption of ordinance 23-06, the cannabis overlay. Councilman Huff, you wanted to talk a bit about maybe what we're going to do.
I think we just need to have, because we're putting this off until, supposedly our next council meeting, but we need some sort of process in place about how we're looking at this. So I kind of feel like that was economic and community development that originally looked at the ordinance. So I kind of feel like it should go back there. And if there are specifics, Councilman Pecoraro, if he could, get us some, or get staff information on what some of these complaints are, staff can check into it. We could have a conversation, economic and community development, and make a look at this specific issue that he's bringing forward, and then make a recommendation back to council. That was my thought process as far as maybe how this should work process wise. I'm open to other ideas here, but I think we need some clarity instead of just saying we're pushing it off the next meeting. That's my thought. So, but I'm open to thoughts, either from other council members or from staff.
So I'll give council members of the mayor a chance to weigh in on that, and then I'll also ask staff if they'd like to. So does anyone have any additional comments to what Councilman Huff just said?
Yeah.
Madam Mayor?
Mr. President. So I tend to agree with Councilman Huff because I know we've talked about this in our ECDC meetings. I would like to emphasize that I would really like to see it back on the calendar within 2 weeks, so we can keep the business and the tech court moving along and not hold them up too much for this. But I do think kicking it back to committee and then moving on from there through the process again to just have a look at that.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I would tend to agree. I hope that we approach this expeditiously, because I don't think it's fair to the business who specifically asked for this to be introduced to begin with, to delay their expansion. And I also kind of want to hear what the problem is as to whether or not it could relate to any other business currently in practice or those in the future, so that we can figure out what is the problem and would it then be reflected in another area in our community. So kind of curious with that also, but my main concern is that we're doing this expeditiously for the other business. I don't think it's fair to them to wait.
Mr. President.
Yeah.
If we could potentially alter the ordinance, does it need to go back to planning and zoning?
I would suspect it will. Yeah, I think if we make alterations to it,
And we'll have to have another.
we're gonna have to start from scratch probably.
Yeah.
Right?
Which then would take it longer than 2 weeks, right?
Yes.
City attorney?
The code does not require that occur.
Okay.
The council could, but there's nothing that says that once the recommendation is made, if a change is made, it has to go back.
There's nothing that says it does have to go back.
Correct.
So it doesn't necessarily have to go back. Okay, so Councilman Dayhoff, you still have the floor. Go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Pecoraro, I think we've done it in the past because the planning and zoning is simply a recommendation to the mayor and council. So we can change it.
That's what you just.
Yeah, good, okay.
Yeah, Mr. President?
Yes.
Yeah, I would just add to that, just remind everybody, we are legislators and this is legislating. That's what legislators do. Proposals come before us, we examine them, sometimes we change them, sometimes we don't. It's certainly within our purview to do that. And, I think this is, as information comes to us, it's a legitimate exercise of our responsibilities. I think, 2 weeks certainly ought to be enough time, for us to take a look at this. Hopefully, Mr. Hoff and his committee are able to do that. I'm happy to cooperate in any way I can, to share information with them, outside the meeting, and encourage some of the folks who have, raised their concerns to me to get in touch with, in a more formal way with the mayor and council and share their concerns. I think that'd be valuable. So, I'll do everything I can to help make that happen as well.
Wonderful. So it sounds to me like we have a consensus to go ahead and refer this back to the committee, have some discussion at the committee level, and then bring it back to council with a recommendation on how to move forward within 2 weeks. Does that make sense to you?
It makes sense. Our next council meeting's October 9th. So it just means we need to be.
Now in your lab.
Yeah, well, you're on my committee, so we're very well.
Yeah. One more thing I go also.
Okay, we'll confer with staff after the meeting to kind of figure out how to handle this.
Sounds great.
Okay.
All right, wonderful. So
Just for clarity, thing too, because when we bring it back, we could end up passing it the way it is right now, or only take out a small section or take out that whole section.
sounds
That's all. We have a variety of options to choose here. So,
yeah.
okay.
Okay, we'll keep moving on. So let's go ahead and move on to departmental reports.
Thank you, Mr. President.
False.
Councilmember Dayhoff is a report from the fire department.
No report.
Okay, I want to take a moment to thank Lynn Griffith with the Arts Council and for hosting some of Fall Fest. And she also, in the Arts Council, pivoted on behalf of September Song, which they held sometime this summer. I think it was in August, actually. They held the Sound of Music there. That's not where that was supposed to be located. So, of course, that's a building that the city owns, a city asset, city interest, and we certainly appreciate the partnership and the cooperation of the Arts Council. Okay, so let's talk about Fall Fest. City staff spend weeks putting together Fall Fest, weeks. We start in January putting together Fall Fest. And it is absolutely heartbreaking when we have to pivot because of the rain. And unfortunately, that pivot has to happen at the absolute last minute. And in this case, it happened multiple times because we thought we were going to get one kind of rainstorm. We ended up getting a slightly different kind of rainstorm that took place a little bit later. And when I say we, it's really the Recreation Department and Public Works Department. I heard such good things about Fall Fest from so many different types of people. It's such a beloved event. For me, the summer's not over until Fall Fest has occurred, and I will die on that hill. But you don't have to take my word for it. Our city clerk volunteered this year, and he'd like to give you just a minute of his perspective on that. Mr. Barber?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I have been in municipal government over 30 years, been doing recreational events since I was 15 years old. I told Abby and her team, that was the best thing I've ever seen and been a part of. So coming to Westminster, I'm like, that is the event to go to. And all of their events, enjoyed myself, like being there, and it was a great event. Well done. Thank you for your work.
30 years of service, you've got some chops to be able to make a comment like that.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, so we will start with the Recreation and Parks Department. Ms. Gruber, who I'm sure is exhausted, is here to tell us about how Fall Fest went, but also in 2 more weeks, we've got another event coming up. So we'll talk a little about that. Ms. Gruber?
That is correct. I really don't feel like I need to say anything more about Fall Fest other than thank you all for your support, for coming out and actually experiencing it, not just talking about it. Every single one of you were there. Some of you, well, most of you on multiple nights. So we really appreciate seeing you out there in support of the event, and my staff really appreciates it too. And I know that you all made a point to make contact with all of them, and they felt that their efforts were recognized and appreciated. And so that makes all the difference when you're working for such a huge goal and you're looking at, degrading forecasts bearing down or on you. So it's hard enough to keep sort of their morale up. But when they're making contact with you, they feel like even though they can't control the weather, the amount of the festival that we were able to put out there was appreciated, and that's very important. So they are now working earnestly to get things put away, which has been very difficult because everything is drenched. So we're drying things out and trying to get things packed up and put away so that we can shift gears into our event prep space and start pulling together oyster stroll. As we prep events, we are creating a space where we start to stage everything. And then we start to move it into vehicles, and then we start to mobilize out onto the street. So it's a very systematic approach. But we have to clear space before we can start for the next one. So don't stop by the building, I guess is what I It looks terrible. So other than that, that concludes my report. Thank you so much.
Are there any questions for the Recreation and Parks Director? Ms. Gruber, and your staff, on behalf of the city, please thank your staff for a job well done.
Absolutely. Thursday was awesome.
It's Friday.
I mean Friday, I meant Friday. Sorry, yeah.
The Recreation and Parks Department certainly can't put that event on without the help of Public Works, who is our behind the scenes workhorses for that and many other events. We will move on to the Public Works Department, Mr. Dick.
Thank you, Ms. Moss. So I'm going to keep it pretty short. Most of it's already been talked about with Fall Fest, and our guys did a great job helping Ms. Gruber in the rec department on pivot late Friday night to make sure we got everybody out of the city park, so we didn't have any issues there with the rain coming in. So I really would like to thank them in a public setting for all the work that they put in for that. Main Street was touched on earlier. We actually have a progress meeting tomorrow morning, so hopefully by tomorrow afternoon I'll have some more information to get out to the public about that project as well. And other than that, the only other two things is we're getting ready for the oyster stroll, as was just mentioned by Abby, and finishing prepping for the leaf season. That's the next thing for us.
I'm gonna be loaded up.
So that's all I have.
Are there any questions for the Public Works Department? Mr. Dick, on behalf of the city, please let your staff know. Thank you for a job well done. All right, let's move on to the IT department. We've been working hard to support the other departments in map layers and ways that we can tell the narrative of the departments visually through maps. Mr. Moore, you give us your report.
Continuing to grow our GIS department as far as the maps we're making and some of the stories we're telling. We're having more meetings with other departments to try to find other ways to utilize those tools that we have. I always tout how helpful this city is to each other, the departments we have. We are involved in a lot of things that go on, such as the stroll, the technology they need, the Wi-Fi access, just going through those processes. It's fun to be involved in at least some way with everything. So it's, we have new hires coming in the last 2 weeks, make sure they have their accounts, their computers, everything ready to go for those things. Continuing to work on our cybersecurity initiatives, doing an audit of what we have. We're going to try to save some money going into the next fiscal year. And we're looking at some options to try to keep the level with support we have. We'll come in a lower cost to try to save some budget that way too. So those are big initiatives we're working on right now.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the IT director? Hearing none, we will move on to the housing department where we are busy with code enforcement. Mr. Brown.
Thank you. Just two things to report on. We are continuing to move people off of our waiting list. The staff is bringing people in each day, giving them an opportunity to go out and find a house that they can afford. So that's moving pretty well. We're also working on just responding to general code complaints out there every day, making sure that we're doing what we need to do in order to ensure that the code is enforced. Other than that, we're just keeping the train moving. That's all I have.
Are there any questions for the housing director? Hearing none, we'll move on to the planning department. Mr. Depot.
Thank you. On September 21st, as already referenced, the Planning and Zoning Commission held public hearings on Ordinance 2023-06 and 07. On October 3rd, the Board of Zoning Appeals is scheduled to vote to go into a closed meeting to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice regarding its responsibilities in the interpretation of the city code and review of applications and the application of the new rules and procedures. They're also scheduled to hear case number 2305. This is an application requesting approval of a variance to the setbacks of an accessory building pursuant to Article 20 special provisions to make structural alterations to an existing garage at 460 East Green Street. Also, case number 2306, this is an application requesting approval to change, and I referenced this, talked a little bit about this, to change an existing non-conforming use to another non-conforming use pursuant to Article 19, nonconformities, Section 164, 135B, And this is to operate an automobile body shop completely within the structure at 247 East Green Street. On October 4th, the Historic District Commission is scheduled to review the architecture of a 4-unit multifamily dwelling use at 288 East Main Street. So we have gotten that project in. And also to discuss the rescheduling of the November HTC meeting due to a conflict with the annual Heart of Civil War Heritage Area meeting. And that completes my report. I'm available for any questions.
Are there any questions for the planning department? Hearing none, we will move on to the finance department. Ms. Rogers.
Thank you, Ms. Inhofe. Good evening. At our last council meeting, Mayor and Council, you approved a new audit firm for us. So just wanted to report that we have met with that audit firm and started our planning for their fiscal 23 audit. They will be back now on October 6th to meet with us and go through a walkthrough of our financial statements. Our plan at this time is to have field work completed in October for our housing area and for the federal funds that we've received, and then which is called a single audit. And then in November, we will plan on them working on field work for our financial audit. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you for all your work putting together the budget ordinance. Are there any questions for the finance director? Moving on, we'll go to the police department.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This October 1st, there are not too many Maryland laws going into effect that affect the operations of the police department as there were last year. This Saturday, we were invited to the annual First Responder Appreciation Blue Mass at St. John Church, which I will be attending. We're continuing our hiring process to fill our remaining sworn vacancies and our one dispatch vacancy. That's all I have to report. Is there any questions?
Are there any questions for the police department? Okay, one final thing I wanted to mention is our water superintendent, Brett Grossnickel, is retiring at the end of this month, which is at the end of the week. I want to thank him for his over 18 years of service to the city. And we want to announce that we have promoted Mike Rawlings to the position of superintendent. So we're very excited for that transition, which begins tomorrow. That concludes my report. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ms. Moss. Anybody have any questions for Ms. Moss before we move on? Okay, sir, are you with McDaniel?
No.
Okay, I apologize. He sent a representative and I wasn't sure if you were him. Okay, so we'll move on to citizen comments. Let's see. The final item on the agenda is citizen comments. We invite the public to address the mayor and council on any issues that pertain to tonight's agenda or any other city issues. For citizens not attending the meeting, we invite them to send your comments or concerns via email to comments@westminstermd.gov. All comments received by email will be shared with the mayor and council. Commenters should include their address and phone number with their comments. We'll now move forward to invite comments from anyone here present this evening. I remind you that this is an opportunity for the public to share their thoughts and concerns, and it's not an exchange or a debate, or we will not answer any questions. We just will listen to what you have to say and then potentially confer with staff or ourselves before a response is given. I encourage you to keep your remarks brief and to the point if possible, and please give your name and address when you make your comments. So would anyone like to have an opportunity to make some comments at this time? Yes, sir.
My name is Doug Silverstein. I'm here representing the individual at 700K Corporate Center Court. We were very interested in the ordinance 2023-06. I enjoyed everything else I heard tonight as well. Wish I had gone to Fall Fest now. I first off want to thank Mr. Depo and his office. They've been incredibly helpful, incredibly responsive and forthcoming about the issues, and getting this moved forward. I want to thank the council and Council President Pecoraro for their comments. Obviously disappointing in the news tonight. I'm not sure I don't think it's our facility that seems to be presenting the issues. It seems like it's the other facility, but to the extent we can facilitate or assist in any questions or any comments that anybody has, please feel free to reach out to myself. Mark has my info. I'm happy to give it to anybody. You know, Verilife has been an upstanding member of this community for a long time now, and they're really just trying to move from one suite to another. So, you know, whatever we can do to make that happen, we would like that to happen in, I think, 2 weeks is what I heard. So, you know, we've been working on this with Mark's office since the end of July. So, you know, again, to move as expeditiously as possible would be great. Thank you.
Appreciate the comments. Thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay, hearing no other comments, we'll go ahead and talk about our next meeting, which is going to be held on, oh my God, I have the wrong date written down here. When is our next meeting? October 9th. So we'll meet on October 9th, 7 p.m. right here. And without objections, we are adjourned.
Oh.
Yeah.